Marcus Aurelius said, "What we do in life echoes through eternity." What is your life echoing through eternity? Welcome to Echoes Through Eternity with Dr. Jeffrey Skinner. Our mission is to inspire, engage, and encourage leaders from across the globe to plant missional churches and be servant leaders. So join us and hear the stories of servant leaders reverberating lives as God echoes them through eternity. Brought to you by Missional Church Planting and Leadership Development and Dynamic Church Planting International.
Welcome in to Echoes Through Eternity, where faith, leadership, and the call of God intersect. I am Dr. Jeffery D. Skinner. Today's episode is for every pastor or church planter who's ever found themselves in a long, silent season. What I call the season of discouragement. Maybe your launch team shrank, the giving dipped, you're preaching faithfully but wondering if anyone's listening. If that's where you are, this episode is for you. The reality of discouragement, every planter hits this wall. Studies show nearly half of all church plants close within 5 years. Most don't close because of heresy or moral failure, or even because they didn't have a good strategy. They close because the planter burns out or gives up. Discouragement isn't weakness. It's evidence that you've invested your soul into something eternal. Paul says in Galatians 6:9, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." That's not poetry. It's a warning. You will grow weary. The question is whether you'll keep sowing when the soil looks barren. Church planting is seasonal work. In the Wesleyan tradition, we talk about grace as a process. Prevenient grace prepares the soil, justifying grace plants the seed, and sanctifying grace grows the fruit. Those same rhythms shape ministry. Spring brings excitement. Summer brings work. Autumn brings fruit. And winter brings waiting. The season of discouragement is a spiritual winter. It's not death. It's dormancy. God is still working beneath the surface. From preparation to discouragement, this past week, I spoke at Music City West Church of the Nazarene. They're in a season of preparation. They've been faithful. They're waiting, they're trusting, and they're listening from the Lord. I preached from Joshua 3. The people of Israel are standing on the banks of the Jordan River, preparing to enter the promised land. But this is a new generation. The parents who saw the Red Sea part are gone. They wandered in the wilderness for what Scripture calls 40 years, meaning a long time. Now, their children stood at flood stage at the Jordan River. They can see the promise, but they can't cross it. Joshua tells them to consecrate their lives, prepare their hearts. He says, because tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. And that's a word for us as church planters. That's a word for you as a church planter. The previous generation maybe missed the promise because they didn't prepare. Or maybe you're a brand new generation in a brand new area that God has called to plow the soil. And oftentimes you may be that first generation that prepares the way for the next generation. Kingdom work is not done in months or days or even years. It's done in generations. And here's the reality. The previous generation didn't learn from their failure. But Joshua calls the people to learn the lessons their parents missed. When they learned to trust, when the priest stepped into the river, when their feet touched the edge, that's when the miracle came. In church planting, the season of discouragement is often a season of preparation. It's where God aligns your will with His. It's where you cast vision again, not for possession, but for inhabiting the promise He's already given. Discouragement usually comes from unmet expectations. We're visionaries. We're optimistic. We can see what could be. But when attendance drops, volunteers disappear, or your sermon falls flat, that optimism meets reality. That's when the enemy whispers, "You failed." The truth, every church planter fails. Every pastor fails. Every human being fails. Behind every story of success is someone who learned from failure. Failure isn't the end, it's the classroom of grace. The Israelites' parents failed because they never learned. They circled the same mountains of fear and complaint until the next generation had to start over. Joshua's generation broke that cycle. Your calling will require the same thing. If you don't prepare, if you don't let God teach you through discouragement, you'll keep repeating the same wilderness patterns. But if you let Him purify you in waiting, you'll be ready to cross the Jordan when He parts the water. Practical steps for enduring the season: return to your call. Write down the moment God called you. Revisit it often. His calling hasn't changed. Stay in the means of grace. Pray, read, fast, and worship. These aren't obligations, they're lifelines. Seek connection. Find a mentor, a coach, or a friend who listens without judgment. Wesley says there's no such thing as solitary religion. Celebrate small wins. Record every baptism and story of transformation. Tell these stories, just as Joshua told the stories of God's faithfulness to the new generation. Tell these stories during the worship service. Gratitude reframes your vision. Rest. Rest isn't laziness, it's loyalty. Sabbath says God can run His church without me for one day. Be honest. Tell your people the truth. They don't need perfection, they need presence. Remember eternity's timeline. The seed you plant today might not bloom for decades, but eternity measures differently. A personal story here. One evening early in my ministry, attendance was down, finances were tight. I was locking the doors after another small service when I sat on the front pew and whispered, "God, don't know how much longer I can do this." And in that silence, I sensed Him say, "You're not called to succeed. You're called to stay faithful." That night didn't change the numbers, but it changed me. Winter didn't end because I worked harder. It ended because I learned to rest in His faithfulness. The Bible doesn't hide discouragement. Moses wanted to quit. Jeremiah cursed the day he was born. Paul said he despaired of life itself. Yet God met each one with new strength. Isaiah 40:31, one of my favorite verses. Those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. The Hebrew word for wait is kavah, means to bind together. Waiting isn't passive. It's binding your life to God's. When you wait, you're being woven into His strength. Wesleyan theology of endurance isn't about stoicism. It's about grace. Prevenient, justifying, sanctifying grace, all working to make you holy in hardship. Discouragement isn't a detour, it's discipleship. Romans 5 says suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. Hope is fruit that only grows after a long winter. If you're ready to quit, don't. You're not weak for feeling weary. You're human. Even Jesus withdrew to lonely places. Even He wept in Gethsemane. Don't make decisions from exhaustion. Wait until the Lord speaks. When you stand before Him, He won't say, "Well done, successful servant." He'll say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Friend, this is not the end of your story. If you're in winter, the soil looks dead, there are roots growing. The branches look bare, but life is moving beneath the bark. The harvest will come. God is faithful in the waiting. My prayer for you today is that every pastor listening to this, every planter listening who feels tired, unseen, or forgotten, that you will be reminded that God is near. My prayer is that God will renew your strength like the eagles. He will teach you to rest in his promises and trust that the seed you've planted will bear fruit in time. I pray that you are shaped in this season of waiting until you cross into your promise. Well, you've been listening to Echoes Through Eternity. Remember, seasons change, but God's will does not. Stay faithful. The harvest is coming, and always remember this question: what is God echoing through your life today?